Okay, so let's get started. Hi guys, my name is Aida. If you have joined us last time, me and Mindy were the ones that were hosting the All In conversations. Thank you to everybody who let us know if you guys are staff or parents or both. Um, if you are a staff member, you can also chime in and let us know maybe some experiences you've had with students and stuff like that, that maybe you have that has helped you or that has helped your students, because we are talking about bullying prevention, and we know that schools are really involved in that kind of stuff, and so we want to make sure that we hear from you guys as well, and maybe what is helpful, so maybe we can help each other out. Okay. If you have any questions, you can write in the chat or you can just unmute yourself. We have Kate Perry here, who is also a CHADS member, and she works for CHADS. And Kate, you can just tell us kind of what you do.
Yeah, so I am the program coordinator for our socially emotional wellness mentoring program. And a little later on, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that and how it relates to bullying prevention. So happy to be here and happy to see all of you here too.
Thank you, Kate. And then I do the signs of suicide. So I go into the schools and do the presentations. And yeah, and that's what my role is at CHADS. So again, if you have any questions, please just let us know. October is Bully Prevention Month, which is why our conversation is about that today. So when we go into schools and we do our presentations, we talk to kids about what is bullying. We let them know that it's behavior that's unwanted, that's aggressive, and that it's repeated over time. And that there seems to be a power imbalance. So the person will try to make themselves seem like they hold power over the other person. And I always like to ask the kids, I'm like, do any of your classmates, do any of your peers really hold power over you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, exactly, because they really don't, right? And then we also talk about it being repeated over time. So if somebody is throwing my book and they come and call me a loser one time, is that going to be considered bullying? No. But if it happens every day for a week or for 2 weeks and it keeps going on, then that's going to be what we're going to consider bullying. And so this is a slide that we actually share with the kids when we talk about bullying. We go over what are different ways that people can bully. So physical, the pushing, shoving, hair pulling, hitting, taking things, slamming stuff. Some schools also have issues with posturing, which teachers have described. I always have the teachers describe it because I think students kind of see it differently in each school. And so they tend to say that posturing is kind of like intimidating the other person, kind of like going at them like this and stuff like that, trying to make them seem like they're going to fight, or like encouraging people to fight. Socially, excluding people, starting rumors, gossiping, purposely embarrassing somebody, the verbal, name calling, teasing, taunting, threatening to harm people, and the cyberbullying, the social media, texting, emails, sharing photos, and even with video games. I When I go out, I talk to the kids a lot about, like, if you share stuff online, it can always be found. When there have been court cases where there have been Snapchat has been subpoenaed for certain records, and they've provided those things. And so I always tell the kids, I'm like, all that stuff can always be found. If you're involved in a bullying incident, that stuff can be found. If you are involved in even like a suicidal incident and stuff like that, again, that stuff can all be found and that stuff can all be shared. And it has been shared in court cases. And so that's definitely something I let the kids know. If you share stuff online, it definitely can and will be found. So Bullying Prevention Month started in October 2006. PACERS, National Bullying Prevention Center, the National Education Association, the National PTA, American Federation for Teachers, and the National Coalition for Parent Involvement in Education is actually who started Bullying Prevention Month. And they just wanted to raise awareness of bullying and the seriousness of it. because 1 in 5 students do experience bullying in real life, and at least 37% are bullied online. And so this happens a lot. One of the statistics that we talk about in our presentations when we talk about bullying is that less than 30% of those people who are bullied actually report it to an adult. And so we talk about the importance of reporting it to an adult, because sometimes it goes above and beyond what they can really handle themselves, right? So it's really important to encourage them to feel comfortable in going and finding that trusted adult that they can really talk to. And then that they feel comfortable sharing with about whatever is going on. And so we just talk a lot about, who is that trusted adult, who is that person that you can really talk to about this, because it can get out of hand and it can get a little much. And so we definitely want them to find that person that they can talk to. And so this is another a slide that we like to share with the kids. We talk about the person in the middle, who's the person being bullied. You have your bully. I ask them, who are the followers? What do you think the followers are doing? And they'll usually say stuff like saying what the bully's saying. They'll be like, yeah, you're such a loser and stuff like that, right? So they're kind of just saying the same stuff as the bully's saying. The supporters are going to be those people who are like egging it on, like, yeah, that's so funny, ha ha ha, good job. And then the passive supporters are going to be those people who are recording it for Snapchat and sharing it online and stuff like that. Then we have our disengaged onlookers, who are those ones that are just kind of walking by. They see it happening, but they're not really paying attention. They just kind of don't want to get involved, right? And then we have our upstanders, who are what we tell the kids, like, this is where we want you to be, right? We want you and your friends to be in this spot. We want you guys to be upstanders. And so we talk to them, these are the things that you can do during an incident. Not all kids are going to feel comfortable defending that target, the person that's being bullied. For some kids, it's really intimidating to do that. And so we want to give them some different options on stuff that they can do, which I always encourage the kids to encourage their friends to come with them and kind of stand behind that person, because I always say, if this person has 5, 6, 7 people standing behind them, then the bully might be a little bit more intimidated about, whatever they're saying or doing, right? And then at that point, they might just kind of back off. We talk about changing the subject, so maybe even saying like, hey, we're about to be late to class. We got to go. Oh, did you turn in that homework assignment? Do you have this? Did you have that book? Just trying to get that bully's attention off of whatever is happening. Questioning the bullying behavior, so asking them, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you saying stuff like that? Why is this necessary? Using humor, making a joke, trying to get everybody's mind kind of off of it and not really, focusing on the whole incident. And so that person that is being bullied can kind of breathe and realize like, hey, okay, let's laugh about whatever it is that's going on, right? And then maybe hopefully that bully will get distracted by that too. And then even just like letting people know, hey, we don't do that at our school. Bullying is not okay. And we don't do that. I think it's a lot harder for kids to kind of go that route. And so we definitely still try to give them other stuff that they feel like they could do to kind of help that person. And then so we tell them, after the incident, just reaching out to that person and saying, hey, are you okay? I didn't agree with what happened today. Just, are you okay? Letting them know that you support them, that you're concerned about them, you just wanted to check on them, make sure they're okay. Because then that person doesn't feel as lonely. They're going to feel like, somebody has their back, even if they're not doing it right in front of that person. We talk about reporting it to a trusted adult, and even reaching out to the person who is the bully to express that concern, right? So like I said, not all kids are going to feel comfortable reaching out to that bully and talking to them about whatever's happening. But if they do, or if it's their friend, even just talking to them in private and saying, hey, why are you doing that? That's not cool. And stuff like that, because we always tell the kids, just because we know that person that's the target of that bully, right? We know that person's having some issues and we tend to focus on that person. But a lot of times that person who is the bully is also having stuff going on themselves. And so I tell the kids, I'm like, you know what, you might be getting help for that person that's being bullied, but in reality, you're also getting help for that bully, because that person has stuff going on too, that they need help and support with. And that's why they're engaging in those behaviors. So you're helping two different people by letting an adult know that this situation is going on. So that's how we encourage our kids to be an upstander instead of just a bystander, and to do stuff to be able to help their classmates. And so how do we talk to our kids about this stuff? So just listening, being that open, letting them kind of get out whatever it is that they need to get out, letting them know that, you guys talking, this is a safe environment, it's judgment free. Let them kind of express whatever it is that they need to express. Because it is really hard for kids to open up. I feel like, especially as they get into high school, they maybe have created some of those barriers and stuff like that. So I feel like for high schoolers, it tends to be a little bit harder to really open up. And so just listening, just making sure that they know, like, hey, I'm here for you. I'm going to listen to whatever it is that you're saying. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to know your kids best. And so you're going to know what they need. You're going to know if this is a kid who, is in your office all the time. You're going to know if this kid is more sensitive. And you're going to know more about that kid because you have some type of relationship with them. And so when they come to you and they're opening up to you, that shows that they are trusting you and that you are being that trusted adult for them. So just listening and letting them kind of talk and express whatever it is that they need to get out. I was talking to my coworkers earlier, and I said, my kid is in preschool right now. It's a second year of preschool. He'll go off to kindergarten next year. And I asked him yesterday, I'm like, how was your day? And he's like, I had a bad day. And I'm like, why? What happened? And he told me that his two friends that we just invited to his birthday were calling him a baby, and all this stuff. And so today I kind of just asked teacher, like, what happened? Like, he was just really upset about that. And I told him, and she's like, oh, well, yeah, they were saying that. We talked about it. I made, they apologize and all this stuff. And so I talked to my son about that. I'm like, they apologize. Let's move past this. If something else comes up, tell them to stop and reach out, to your teacher. Let your teacher know that this stuff is going on. So making sure that your kids know, like, hey, it's okay to talk to somebody about whatever it is that's going on. Learning as much as you can about the situation is so important. How long has this been going on? Who's involved? What steps have been taken? So what kind of things has your child done to really fix this situation, or maybe get some help with this situation? What have they done themselves to really help themselves get out of this situation? And even just knowing how long this has been going on is super helpful, right? Because then you can you have that information, you have that evidence, you can say, okay, this is what my child told me, this is when it started, this is how long it's been going on, these are the people that are involved, this is how it's been happening, right? So even just thinking about, like, is this happening just online? Is this happening just in school? Where is this happening? So just having as much information as you can about the situation is important, because then you kind of have more information about it and you can go on and make the next steps that you need to, whether that be talking to school or even just be talking to your child about how maybe they get out of that situation and stuff like that. And then just making sure your child knows this isn't their fault. It's never okay, that nobody deserves this, that they should feel safe at school. They have that right to be able to feel safe at school, and that they're not alone and that you're there to help them. And when I go into presentations, I tell kids, I'm like, do us adults get it right every time? They're like, no. And I'm like, no, right, we don't. And that's okay. Sometimes we don't have all the answers. And sometimes being vulnerable with our kids and saying, I don't have all the answers, but let's find out together, is super helpful for them, because then they know, hey, you know what, sometimes you don't know the answer as the adult either, but you're still willing to figure this situation out with me and get me that help. So just listen, be open as you can. And sometimes you have to watch our reactions when kids tell us stuff, especially if it's something, really bad, or something, really extreme that maybe happened. Because sometimes we want to go to that point where we feel super angry, we want to yell, and we want to do that kind of stuff, right? But we have to kind of remain calm, so to make sure that they know, like, hey, this anger isn't towards you, and I still want you to feel comfortable coming to me and talking to me. And even if you do, respond in that way, letting your kids know, hey, you know what, I was upset. I wasn't upset at you. I was upset about the situation, and explaining that to them. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We all have big reactions to things, especially when it involves our kids. So just be open with your kids and let them know that. So how to help your child? Contact the school. Ask them what maybe their policies are on these things. Ask them how you can be involved. Ask them, what information you can give them, or even give them that information that you've collected from your child, and let them know, like, hey, this is what my kid told me when it started. These are the people that are involved. These are the things that they're going to want to know, right? So ask them how you can be involved. Contact the school counselor. Sometimes school counselors have that time in their schedules where they go and observe kids and stuff like that. And so if you're reaching out to your counselor, your school might do that. Your school might say, okay, I'm going to go, observe the student and see what's really going on. Or any other mental health provider also. So if you have like a counselor maybe that your child visits or that you visit, even just asking them, like, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation? Sometimes it's helpful to get an outsider's point of view on the situation, because especially if it's our own kids, our emotions tend to be super involved in that. And especially my staff here, you guys work with these kids on a regular basis, and especially those kids that come to you guys regularly, you're going to have that emotion towards those kids, and you're going to want to feel protective over them. So sometimes even just asking an outsider's point of view can be really helpful in figuring out, okay, what should we do next? Explaining the difference between tattling and telling. I think this is important definitely for kids to know, especially our younger kids, right? Because a lot of times people don't want to tell on people because they feel like they're tattling, and they're just not, they're just going to get in trouble. They're being a snitch or whatever it is. So just kind of explaining to them, like, hey, this is not, you're not tattling on somebody if you're talking about this person bullying you. This is something that we need to know, because if you're not feeling safe at school, if you're feeling uneasy, we need to know that, right? Because they're not going to be very successful at school if they're coming to school every day and they're feeling like, they're waiting any second for this person to do or say something to them, right? That's not going to make them have a very good school environment. And so we want them to know, like, hey, we really need to know this information if this is going on. Write things down. So that goes back to the evidence part of it. When you write things down, you're gonna, maybe you have that conversation with your kid. And after you have that conversation, you go and write down kind of what you guys talked about, because sometimes we'll forget some of those details that they told us in that moment, right? And so it's helpful to write things down after you've had that conversation with the kids, because then you can kind of go back and say, okay, this is what this kid told me, and then not miss any details that maybe are really important, but maybe you forget. Especially my staff, because you guys see a lot of people all the time, right? And so you guys hear a lot of stuff from a lot of different kids. So sometimes that stuff gets mixed up and jumbled and stuff like that. So writing things down can be really, really helpful. Knowing that, or establishing a good relationship with the schools and just checking in, letting the school know, hey, I'm here, this, I know this is what we talked about. This is the plan we came up with. This is what I have. This is the information I have from my end. What's going on your end? What can I do? And all that kind of stuff. And just kind of being open with the schools and letting them know like, hey, I'm here to support you and however I can to help get this situation resolved. And also understanding that your plan might include legal counsel or law enforcement if the situation doesn't change. There are laws against bullying in Missouri. And so, you might eventually have to go down that route if stuff doesn't change. Do any of my school staff, is there anything that you feel like parents can do that's helpful for you guys in regards to like a situation like this?
I think one thing that's helpful, I think it's more even parent to parent, is just to assume that we both want the same thing. I think anytime a parent has come to me and said, I know we both want, kids to feel safe, or I know we both want, I think starting from that common ground is really important.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And even sometimes, if you know that parent, having that conversation with the parent who is the parent of the person that's bullying your kid, having those conversations with those parents. I think it's sometimes hard because no parent wants to hear that their kid is the bully, right? And we can sometimes parents can be like, no, that's not my kid. My kid would never do that, right? And so just kind of sometimes those conversations are hard, but I definitely think that's important. Just saying, hey, we want the same stuff for our kids. We both want them to feel safe. I think that's huge. And I love that you said that. If anybody else wants to add anything else helpful, you can write it in the chat too. Okay. So Missouri, like I said, they have bully prevention laws. They say that all schools must have these policies in place. They don't cover off-campus conduct unless it originates on school campus or during a district activities, using school resources, so school computers and stuff like that. If there is, or even if the student's using their own device at the time during those things, during school hours or during that activity, they can also still use like those messages and stuff like that if it goes like to court and stuff. And then they also say that schools must provide mental health education for students who are being bullied. So just having that support for those kids and teaching them like ways that they can, deal with the bullying and stuff like that. Laws do not create exceptions for parent involvement in addressing bullying. So I thought that was pretty interesting when I read that, because I feel like parents are a huge part of it. And I feel like parents definitely need to be involved when addressing these behaviors on both sides, right? And these situations on both sides. But the law doesn't make parents be involved in this stuff. But I definitely think that schools should try as hard as they can to get those parents involved, because they're the ones that are talking to their kids at home. They're the ones that something's obviously happening, right? And that is causing their kid maybe to act like this. And so we definitely want to be able to reach those parents. And I know sometimes that's pretty hard.
Hey, Aida.
A question?
Yeah, Sandra has a question.
Hi, so you're talking from Missouri. I'm in Texas, and there's specific laws that the parents can't get involved.
No, it's not that they can't get involved. It's just like saying there's no law saying that they have to be involved in Missouri. So I don't know how it is in Texas. I'm not sure in Texas.
Well, we just had on the news tonight a young boy. He looked to be about maybe 12, 13. It was on the news just 15 minutes ago where another boy walked up and punched him in the face on video. the mother's crying on TV.
Mhm.
Um, we have a Veterans Memorial. We have a room called Bella's Room, and it's a mental health room at the high school, Veterans Memorial. It's a new high school, beautiful school. There's been 2 suicides or more there, and the school's not even, it's 4 years old or less.
Yeah.
I have problems with APS, CCPD, people that are supposed to be investigating and making these reports. They're not thoroughly doing their job. And that leaves the child unsafe and insecure.
Yeah. And I used to work for like Children's Vision, which is like Child Protective Services here in Missouri. And I don't know how it is in Texas, but I know here, like, there's only so much that we can even do sometimes, or all the time actually. A lot of stuff in Missouri would depend on like the police or doctors, or those are the people that can take custody here. I think in Texas, like they can and stuff. But sometimes they only have so many resources or so many things that they can do in those situations. There are workers that aren't the greatest, but also they do have barriers in those different agencies too. That is just hard. I think that the child welfare system just all around is hard. It's really difficult to really go in and be able to help those kids, because sometimes you go in a house and this kid needs help, it, but you can't really do nothing, and you try all these different avenues and it still kind of gets nowhere. And so I think that that's where, sometimes like we come in and we talk to the kids about this stuff. And I had a kid the other day, I was doing actually a bully-free presentation. And when we go in, we talk about Chad and his story. And one of the girls says, then we talked about like depression and anxiety symptoms and signs of suicide. And one of the girls like, why are we talking about this if we're supposed to be having a presentation on bullying? And I was like, well, why do you think, and then some of the students shared like, because this could be a reason why maybe somebody, dies by suicide is because of this and stuff like that. And so we definitely talked about that. Like this could definitely be a trigger for some kids. And so we want to make sure that, you guys have all the resources and all the knowledge that we can give you to know what to do if you are having these feelings, so we can prevent that stuff from happening. But I definitely think that our kids do need more support, for sure.
Am I still talking?
You can.
Okay. My situation, I was bullied all my life. I'm 64. I have, of course, I have a 5-year-old grandson coming up, so that's frightening.
Yeah.
I have a 37-year-old mentally challenged daughter that's been severely abused. She's now in a wheelchair because of the abuse. She's pharmaceutically drugged by these organizations so that she can't talk about the bullying. So this goes way beyond, I mean, I know you're talking, I guess, children in school. This goes way beyond. It goes to the adult. This is happening in the adult realm with me, and psychiatrists, police departments making reports that are falsifying the organizations, their nonprofits, group home situations, and there's a lot of abuse. And I'm in therapy care for the last 5 years, because when I call APS or I call CCPD or I try to get an investigation, they retaliate and they hurt my daughter. That's vulnerable. And these are adults that are doing this.
Yeah.
So I understand your position, and I'm glad I could join. Actually, my therapist, his name is Chad.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that your daughter is going through all that. But I mean, it's good that she has you as a support and that you're trying, as hard as you can to kind of be her voice, right? But even when we think about like bullying, sometimes, these kids maybe see this behavior from their parents, right? And maybe their parents act like this to other people and stuff like that. And now that's why they're doing it at school, right? So I think it definitely, we need to be able to be reaching those kids too, not just the victim of the bullying, but also that person who's doing the bullying, so that we can prevent them from becoming adults who are starting to bully people, right?
Yep.
Thank you for sharing, Sandra.
Thank you for listening. Hello, everybody.
No problem. Yeah, so Missouri does have those laws. I think that I don't know if every state has certain laws and stuff like that, but it's definitely something, if you're not in Missouri, you can look up in your state. But I know Missouri schools are required to have those anti-bullying policies, and they have to have it like shared in the school in a certain way, and they have to have the kids know like what are the procedures and stuff like that. So I think that Missouri is definitely trying to, get law enforcement more involved in this kind of stuff, so that we can help prevent these things from happening. So hopefully we just get better and better with that part of it.
I'm actually talking with my state representative of
Oh,
Texas
good.
about changing legislation, licensing, certification, whatever I can do.
Oh, good.
Yes. Mhm.
That's amazing. And so these are just some additional resources for you guys. So you have Chad's phone number up here, the Trevor Project for LGBTQ lives, the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, St. Louis County Youth Connection Helpline, RAIN, there's a crisis text line, and then the new 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. I know some people have said that they have had issues with calling 988, or they've seen on the news that people have had issues. Because they haven't had as much staff to answer. But I read an article recently that said that things have gotten better recently with it, because it's kind of like mellowing out. And so I tell the kids, if you are in a situation where, you're feeling suicidal, you're in the middle of that crisis, or you're like, I'm gonna hurt myself, you try to call 988 and nobody answers, call 911. So that's what I have been talking to the kids about. So Kay asked, how do you reach the actual bully and get them to stop? You mentioned the bully may be going through things too. I mean, it just depends. All kids are different. No kid is going to react the same way to each person. I think that figuring out who is that person that this kid really feels comfortable talking to is going to be number one. Is it a coach? Is it a teacher? Is it, who is it at school? I tell the kids, when I was there, when I was younger, like I couldn't go talk to my parents about stuff. They would have just been like, you're overreacting, you're being dramatic, you don't know what you're talking about. So it was always helpful for me to have somebody at school, because that school person can really understand this stuff better. And they can explain this stuff a lot better to my parents than what I can even. So I really encourage the kids to have those relationships with someone at school for sure. If you are a parent, even just encouraging that relationship with a counselor. So I had done a training trusted adults presentation. I told the parents, when your kid goes off to high school, like they're going to have that same counselor for the next 4 years, right? So maybe on that open house, go find out who is that counselor, and go introduce yourselves to that person so that, your kid is kind of familiar with it. The barriers that I have seen or that kids have said to me about talking to like their school counselors are a lot of times that they just don't know who they are, or they might know who they are, but they don't really know them. So they don't feel 100% comfortable, or they think that their counselor is going to tell everybody everything that's happening. So I always tell them, I'm like, you know what, ask them, what are those boundaries? What are the boundaries that you have to tell my parents that I told you this, or you don't? But I think that just really figuring out, who is this person's trusted adult? Who is this person's, person that they can talk to? And even if they don't have that person that they can talk to, even if they are super closed off, even if they don't feel comfortable talking to anybody, just starting small. Talk to that person like, hey, how are you? I just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, how's school going, how's your class, blah, blah. And that's it. And kind of do that maybe, once a week or something like that, and kind of start building that relationship with that person. And then that way they can start feeling a little bit more comfortable in talking about whatever's happening. But I just think that building that trust with someone is definitely going to be that first start of how to reach that person.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I think the schools should have like, they started here, it's called Bella's Room. And it's for mental health reasons. Maybe they could have in the schools like Chad's Room, where they go in and they can actually talk.
Yeah, I think some schools do have that. They have like a space in the, they have a room that's like a quiet room or like a calming room, and stuff like that. So I think some schools do have that. Some schools just are not able to, they just don't have the space to have that. And so that is sometimes a challenge. But yeah, I know some schools definitely do have that. A lot of the counselors that I have seen have stuff in their office, whether that be like fidgets or like that like sand they can rake and stuff like that. So stuff that's kind of calming in their offices that can kind of help kids too. And so I think a lot more people and even teachers, I've seen a lot of teachers have the fidgets and stuff in their classrooms. And so I think a lot more people are trying to get that stuff in the class or at least in the school, so that kids have kind of something to do to maybe help them calm down. Good questions. Okay,
So-
anybody have, go ahead.
So one of the things that I think it is an area where Missouri is lacking within the law. So the law states that we have to provide counseling service or mental health services or direct services to the person who was bullied, so that they can learn, I guess, to be more assertive, things like that. But it doesn't address any type of services for the person who is potentially displaying bullying behaviors.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the Second Step program does offer is they offer within that program, there's basically like a safety plan for someone who is potentially being bullied. So it's like a safety plan of like, okay, if this is happening when you go to gym, here are some things that you can do. You're gonna stay with this friend. You bring a peer in, you let the adults know. So there's like a safety plan for them, but the other side of it is a behavior change form for the student who is potentially displaying bullying behaviors. And so what that looks like is, hey, we're going to talk about this. This is not okay in our school. We don't do that here. And so, when you say these mean and hurtful things, it's not okay. And we're going to practice what you can say instead. And so I know that can work really well in our elementary classrooms, but I think we also need to get better at doing that at our middle school and high school, because, you have to look at it as, is it a skill deficit? What is it that, do they lack the social interaction ability to, work with their peers, that kind of thing. So, we have to look at it from both sides and really address it that way.
Yeah, because I mean, it can be different for a whole bunch, like it can just be different for everybody, right? Not every bully is going to have the same issue and why they're maybe engaging in these behaviors. And so it's definitely something, that does need to be addressed. Like you said, that there's no law saying that has to be included, right? A lot of times we just focus on the victim. And so I think we definitely need to focus on the bully too. Good questions, guys. So I was gonna toss it over to Kate so she can kind of let us know, what she does, what her program does, and some stuff that they do. Go ahead, Kate. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm Kate Perry. I am the program coordinator for our mentoring program at CHADS. So some of you might be familiar with it, but if you're not, The program is embedded in 62 schools across St. Louis County, St. Louis City, St. Charles County, and Jefferson County. And we have mentors in those schools that meet with students once a week in either one-on-one sessions, or we do small groups as well. So those are 30 to 40-minute sessions a week. And we have a systematic curriculum that we use based on the 5 CASEL competencies. So some of you might be familiar with those, but those are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So our curriculum is based on those 5 competencies, and within those competencies, there are subtopics that we address every week. So we do the mentoring and teach the curriculum kind of in a variety of ways. So we sometimes will do a worksheet, or we might do a role play activity, or we might watch a video or read an article. So it's very flexible and based on the child's age, and just kind of, we try to kind of cater it to things that they enjoy and that they like doing. So it's pretty cool. Our mentors have, the ability to kind of modify that curriculum according to what the kid needs. So if that child is, experiencing bullying, or maybe exhibiting bullying behavior, we can use our curriculum to kind of shape that and provide them with the knowledge and skills and tools that they need. So within those 5 CASEL competencies, like I said, we have some subtopics. So for example, in self-awareness, we talk about identity, we talk about confidence. So those are just a couple that kind of apply to our whole discussion with bullying prevention. Within self-management, we talk about coping skills and stress management. So if a student is experiencing bullying, how can they cope with that? In social awareness, which I think is a big one for this topic, we discuss recognizing emotions in others. We talk about empathy, and we talk about diversity and inclusion. So those topics are especially helpful for those that might be exhibiting bullying behavior. Maybe they are lacking some of that empathy, or have never been taught the skill to kind of put themselves in someone else's shoes. So we try to teach those skills. And then maybe it is an issue of diversity and inclusion, and maybe those kids are just a little uninformed about those things. So we talk about how just because you're different than someone else doesn't make you any better or any worse than another person. Within relationship skills, that's obviously a big one as well. We talk about what is a healthy relationship versus an unhealthy relationship. We talk about, to the younger kids, we talk about friendships, but then once we get into middle and high school, we also talk about the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy romantic relationship. We also talk about setting boundaries, which is big when it comes to bullying. And we talk about conflict resolution. So within those, we also have a week where we role play conflict resolution, and we role play setting boundaries. So I think that's another really helpful activity for some kids who maybe they are dealing with a bully, and they just need to actually role play the situation. So maybe I take on a role and they take on a role, and we just kind of walk through it. That can be really helpful for a student as well. And then within responsible decision making, we talk about how our decisions affect others. So we kind of go through the decision making process and thinking about the effects of a decision before we make it, and how it'll affect other people around us and society as a whole. So that's kind of a little bit about our program and what we do. I think this program is great for seriously any kid, no matter what they're dealing with, because these social emotional skills are important for everyone. But it's especially helpful for students who are being bullied, or even the ones that are exhibiting bullying behavior. And I think it's especially hopeful for those parents or staff members who have a student or a child that is the bully, to know that that behavior can change. And that's kind of what we're working on as mentors, is just giving those kids the skills and the tools they need to be more empathetic and yeah, to just change some of those things. So there's some hope in that as well. So just from my experience, even before I worked at Chad's, I was a special education teacher for 3 years. And my biggest tips, I guess you could say, or things that I have come across, and everybody's experience is a little bit different, but is just, I think the biggest thing is collaboration between families, counselors, teachers, other staff members, whether your student is part of a special education program. You can't expect anything to happen when there's no collaboration. Half their life is at school, half their life is at home. You kind of have to mold those together in order to get things accomplished. So I just like to tell parents, like, stay in contact with your counselors, even if they're not emailing you to tell you that things are going wrong. Talk with them about the things that are going good too. So keep that collaboration going, and I think that's really important. Also, Aida talked about this a little bit earlier, but just making sure that your child has a trusted adult, and a trusted adult at school. So maybe I always ask a kid, who are your trusted adults? And a lot of time they'll say mom or dad, and that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. We want parents to be trusted adults, but they also need that trusted adult at school, because the parent is not there, and there's not much a parent can do when a child is at school and they're not. So making sure that your child has a trusted, safe adult at school, and that you can have a relationship with that adult to stay in the loop with things that are going on in school. And then we also
Sorry.
talked about this a little while. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
How does a student get enrolled in?
Yeah, so like I said, the mentoring program is embedded in 62 schools across the St. Louis area. So it would be worth looking into seeing if your child's school has a mentor. But otherwise, we also do community referrals, and we have someone that does virtual mentoring, or even the potential to do an in-office mentoring at our Chad's office in South County. So if you go to our website and look at our programs, I believe it's actually in the chat, the link. There's an interest form on there that you can fill out and kind of tell us a little bit about your child and maybe what they're dealing with. And then we will get back to you to kind of help you get connected with seeing if there's a mentor at your school, or whether you would be interested in virtual or coming in the office or something like that. So that's kind of how it works as far as getting enrolled for mentoring services.
And I've had schools ask me about it too. So then once I'm done, I send an email to my supervisor and say, hey, the school asked about mentoring and stuff like that. And then they'll send it on to the proper channels. And so you guys can also ask your presenter, if you guys have a presenter come in at school, you can ask them about it and see if they'll email somebody for you too. But yeah, we do have a form in the chat that you can click on, and you can fill out the form for your school or for your child.
Yeah. So I think as far as, well, I was going to say, as far as our schools, which this is actually a really great thing, is that we have so many schools that want to be involved in the programs, especially since the pandemic and, a lot of the emotional issues that came with that for our students, that we have a wait list, which is good, but we're hoping to, continue to provide services to more and more schools as the years go on. So that's definitely something to look into as well. Other than that, like I said, if a student were to come into our mentoring session and report bullying, I would like we talked about earlier, probably address or point them towards some of the skills that we've already talked about or maybe worked on. And it also, like Aida has mentioned, it depends on the student and the situation, which is why those relationships are so important, because we're going to know what's best for that student, and if that situation is serious enough that we need to get another staff member involved. Sometimes it's a situation where we can talk through or role play, like I mentioned earlier, and maybe that student can handle that situation on their own. But I would say most of the time, as a mentor, I'm always communicating with the counselors, with the families, with the teachers, so to make them aware of things that are going on. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, let me know. But that is all I had, Aida.
Thank you. I always, every time I go out and talk to kids, I tell them, you know, you might have only that one piece of the puzzle. And so talking to, you know, the counselor or talking to the parent can really help figure out what is going on with this kid, right? So how severe is the situation? When I was in high school, I still talk to my high school nurse. And I told her, I was like, you know, you really, like, you were my trusted adult in high school. Like, you were the person that I would go and talk to if I needed anything. And I still, like, she has just connected with so many kids. And so you guys are so, so important. And I don't think that you guys really realize how important you are to these kids. And so you guys need to give yourselves a pat on the back because you guys are so important in these kids' lives. You know, not everybody's parent is their trusted adult. And so they really do look to you guys to be that person for them and to be able to talk to. And later on, when they become an adult, they're going to remember you. Even if you think they might not, they probably will. And so just keeping that open relationship. And like I said, even if you have that kid that's just really hard, that you can't reach, that is just having severe behavior problems and stuff like that, start small. You know, you have to sometimes build trust with those kids. And sometimes, you know, maybe at home they have a lot of stuff going on and they don't have anybody they can trust. And so that's why they have so many barriers up. But you kind of starting small with them and you reaching out to them and just showing them like, hey, I do really want to talk to you. I do really care about you. I do really want to make sure you're okay. Even if you are getting in trouble all the time for these behaviors, you know, I still want to be here and support you. So I think that is definitely gonna make them feel better and feel more comfortable about coming and talking to you. But sometimes it just takes time. It just takes time. And that's all we can really do sometimes is just try as much as we can to reach those kids, whether it be, like we said, the victim or the person who is the bully. That's all we can do is just talk to them and try to build that relationship as much as we can.
I think y'all should go nationwide.
Well, our plan is in 10 years to be across all of Missouri. So maybe our plan for like 30 years can be nationwide. Who knows?
I don't think it would be that hard since we do have internet and the ability to connect. I think Chad's could be everywhere, you know, like the little boy that got hit in the face today and the three other boys that were just filming it and watching. They need things like that. And I think with the internet and connection that it's a lot more simpler than 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with phones and all that stuff just being around so much, I think kids are just scared to not be included or to be the victim themselves. And they do that stuff and they know that it's probably not the best thing to do, or they think it's funny and stuff like that. And sometimes that stuff starts at home. Sometimes, you know, we as the parents have to let our kids know, like, hey, that's not funny. That's not okay. Like, that's really regarding someone's safety. When we talk to kids about, you know, if their friend says they want to hurt themselves and we say, that's not tattling, that's regarding your friend's safety. Like, we want to make sure that this person is okay. Like, this is regarding their safety. If you don't say something, they might not be here tomorrow, right? And so having kids know that there is a difference and that this stuff is important to tell, that it's not just something that's, little kid stuff or it's going to go away or whatever. If somebody's really struggling with this, they really, really need that support.
Thank you, ladies. Goodbye. Thank you very much. From
Thank
Tech.
you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sandra. Anybody else have any questions, concerns, anything they want to share that they think could be helpful to their other staff members?
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We will have our next All-In conversations next month. So join us for that. And we'll send out an email and let you know what the topic will be for that. And then we'll probably have another staff member join to talk about our other program. And so join us for that. Encourage your friends and family members to join us because we really want to make sure, we can get all this information out. Because I know a lot of you, my staff members, you guys are probably like, I know this stuff, I hear this stuff. And so maybe just reaching out to the parents is going to help make your jobs a little bit easier, hopefully. Thank you guys all so much. I hope you guys have a good evening. And if you have any questions, you guys can always email us and let us know.